Few places in the world inspired true dread among cultivators. Devilfall Valley was one of them. Here the land itself was hostile space, fractured without warning. Ancient restrictions lay dormant like slumbering beasts, and even nascent soul cultivators could perish in an instant through a single careless step. Time, fortune, and cultivation offered no guarantees within its borders. Those who entered did not fear monsters alone. They feared the valley itself. Yet despite its merciless reputation, Devilfall Valley continued to draw cultivators from every sect and faction. For beneath its layers of lethal restrictions and spatial chaos lay remnants of an ancient era. Treasures powerful, enough to overturn fate's secrets, capable of shaking the cultivation world and beasts that had survived since antiquity. This time Han Li had stepped into the valley not for fortune alone, but for something far more dangerous. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. Not far behind Han Li lay a vast depression more than 300 meters across. It was utterly desolate, barren to the extreme, as though it had never been shaped by nature at all. Han Li's expression shifted slightly. He immediately released his spiritual sense, sweeping it outward to scan a radius of 15 kilometers. Only after confirming that there were no other cultivators nearby did he turn his gaze back to the depression and cautiously make his way toward it. Upon reaching the edge, Han Li examined it closely, and a trace of alarm soon surfaced on his face. This was no ordinary depression, it was a perfectly symmetrical circular pit. Its interior was filled with layers of ash of indeterminable depth, so dense that it was impossible to see the bottom. Han Li stared at the enormous pit for a long moment, his brows knitted in contemplation. Then he formed an incantation seal with his hands. A fierce gale, nearly 30 meters tall, erupted before him. Go. With a flick of his sleeve, the gale surged forward, sweeping violently through the pit. Ash and shattered stone were carried away wherever the wind passed. Moments later, the pit's true form was revealed. At its bottom lay a slab of dark red volcanic rock, unnaturally smooth, as if it had been melted and polished by terrifying heat. This is... At a single glance, Han Li realized that this surface had been formed under extremely high temperatures. Likely at the very moment the pit itself was created. Shock flashed across his face as various possibilities raced through his mind. Could this pit have been formed by something akin to a massive fireball? If he were to strike stone with a fireball himself, the result would be insignificant by comparison, no more than a fraction of this scale. This pit was more than 100 times larger than anything he could create. Could the abilities of ancient cultivators truly have been so terrifying? Lost in thought, Han Li finally let out a quiet sigh and shook his head. After pondering further, he felt it more likely that this pit had been caused by some powerful ancient fire attribute treasure. Even so, it was enough to demonstrate that the strength of ancient cultivators far surpassed that of cultivators of the present era. Han Li slowly circled the stone pit once more, but discovered nothing else of note. He eventually came to a stop and raised his head toward the sky. By all rights, it should have been noon, yet there was no sun to be seen. Instead, the heavens were shrouded in an endless expanse of yellow haze, emitting only a dim, murky glow. This did not surprise Han Li. Clearly, some sort of restriction enveloped the entire sky. He surmised that flying too high would almost certainly trigger it. Even so, he needed to confirm his suspicions. Han Li reached into his storage pouch, produced a gold-devouring beetle, and casually tossed it into the air. Raising his head, he watched emotionlessly as the beetle ascended. When it reached roughly 180 meters in height, a bolt of blue lightning suddenly materialized out of thin air and struck it down. The beetle spun wildly as it fell more than 20 meters, but it quickly spread its wings and stabilized itself, as though nothing had happened. Han Li's gaze grew thoughtful. He beckoned the beetle back, then oriented himself. With a faint flicker of light, he began moving westward at a measured pace. He dared not fly too quickly through this strange land. One careless move could bring him into contact with a restriction or a spatial tear leading to an untimely death. As for Violet Spirit and Marquis Nanlong Li had already made his plans. His priorities were clear: seize the spirit-kindle fruit and join forces with Marquis Nanlong to slay the ancient flame. Toad. Although the ghost spirit sect's nascent soul elder had discovered the spirit-kindle fruit upon entering the valley, he had been unable to remember its precise location. Finding it again would take time, and even if they succeeded, the fruit would need to be refined into a pill and consumed immediately. Factoring in the time required to absorb the medicinal effects, the entire process would take several days at the very least. Once Han Li obtained the inner core of the ancient flame toad, something Nangong Wan desperately needed, he could search for the spirit-kindle fruit without worry. Not to mention, he was also quite interested in the ancient treasures the toad was rumored to guard. With these thoughts in mind, Han Li spread his spiritual sense to its fullest extent. His eyes occasionally flickered with blue light as he activated the bright sight spirit eyes, carefully avoiding hidden restrictions and spatial tiers. Though he could not determine his exact location within the valley, he knew he could not be too far from the other cultivators. While the transportation formation was said to teleport people randomly, it should still operate within a limited range. Han Li had no intention of encountering anyone else. His destination was the westernmost region of Devil Fall Valley, where he was to meet Marquis Nanlong. According to Marquis Nanlong, although he possessed Master Kang Kun's method for entering the valley, the technique was extremely dangerous and consumed an enormous amount of strength. Its sole advantage lay in allowing one to follow Master Kang Kun's original route straight into the depths of the valley. After careful consideration, Han Li chose to use the Ghost Spirit Sect's method instead. The sect had been confident enough in their technique to openly sell Devil Fall medallions, suggesting a reasonable degree of safety. From what Han Li had observed, entering the outer valley had indeed gone smoothly, though some danger would still be unavoidable if he hurried. As Han Li flew forward, his gaze constantly swept his surroundings. Suddenly, he slowed to a halt, frowning as he stared ahead. Moments later, his expression relaxed, though his speed unconsciously decreased. After traveling another 300 meters, Han Li stopped and looked into the distance. Suspended in mid-air was a crescent-shaped arc of white light, roughly 3 meters long. It was completely motionless and emitted no aura whatsoever. Han Li examined it carefully before flicking his hand. A streak of azure sword chi shot forward. With a sharp explosion, azure light burst forth. Yet the moment the sword chi touched the arc of light, it vanished as though swallowed whole. The crescent-shaped arc remained entirely unaffected. Han Li nodded slightly. As expected, this was a spatial tear. If all spatial tears were this visible, avoiding them would be simple. Unfortunately, the indistinct ones were far more troublesome. Encountering a spatial tear so soon after entering the valley only demonstrated how densely they were scattered. Throughout Devil Fall Valley, one moment of carelessness would be fatal. A chill ran through Han Li's heart. His figure blurred as he detoured widely around the tear and continued onward without sparing it another glance. Unbeknownst to him, over 50 kilometers away, a fat old man stood staring at a foot-long arc of white light. He muttered to himself, "How dangerous to think I was teleported right beside a spatial tear. If I had landed 30 meters closer, I would already be dead. It seems I must be far more cautious. Devil Fall Valley truly is riddled with these tears." His complexion had turned pale, but after confirming with his spiritual sense that there were no other immediate dangers, he regained his composure and flew off. Yet after traveling barely 20 meters, another arc of white light suddenly appeared directly in his path. He did not even have time to scream. His body was instantly severed in two, blood spraying through the air as both halves fell lifelessly to the ground. His face was frozen in disbelief. Moments later, the spatial tear dimmed, slowly fading from sight as though it had never existed. If anyone were to pass by, there would be no sign that death had ever lurked there. Elsewhere, 3 cultivators clad in green robes flew back and forth around a mound of rubble. No matter which direction they attempted to escape, They were blocked by a barrier of radiant rainbow light once they reached a distance of 100 meters. A burly man with a long blade-shaped scar across his face could no longer contain himself. "This won't work. We can't get out." Those ghost spirit sect bastards actually teleported us straight into a restriction. Once we leave this place, we'll definitely settle this score with them. A sharp-featured cultivator with prominent cheekbones hovered in the air and snorted coldly. Enough complaining. What does the ghost spirit sect have to fear from a small sect like ours? They warned us from the start that the teleportation would be random. If someone were sent into a spatial tear, they could only blame their own luck. At least this restriction isn't an offensive type. We should be able to slowly wear it down and escape. The scarred man shook his head grimly. But by the time we get out, all the good treasures will already be gone. With our cultivation, we can only search the outer valley. Entering the inner valley would be suicide. We spent nearly all of our wealth just to buy those devil-full medallions. After a brief hesitation, the sharp-cheeked cultivator spoke again. "In that case, we'll destroy the restriction by force. It may be profound, but it's still located in the outer valley. It shouldn't be beyond our ability. Even if we lose some magic power, we can still manage." The third member of the group, a tanned cultivator, pondered silently before nodding. "Fine, let's do it. Second brother, you have an offensive-type magic treasure. We'll support you from the side. Leave it to me." The burly man's eyes lit up with excitement. "With just a few strikes, I'll smash this wretched thing to pieces." He spat out a sphere of yellow light, revealing a finely carved stone block barely an inch long. Forming a hand seal, he pointed at it. The stone block shot forward, rapidly expanding until it reached a length of 1 meter. At the same time, the other two cultivators released streaks of red and white light, revealing 2 gleaming flying swords that shimmered with killing intent. "Go!" the burly man roared. The stone block spun once in mid-air before smashing into the rainbow light barrier in a blinding burst of radiance. Almost simultaneously, the 2 flying swords transformed into streaks of light and followed closely behind. As expected, the stone block was an extraordinary magic treasure. Even before making contact, it carried with it the faint rolling roar of a storm. In the next instant, a thunderous explosion echoed through the area. Multicolored light pulsed violently as the surrounding earth trembled and swayed. Seeing the might of the stone block, the other 2 cultivators instinctively revealed hopeful smiles. Yet those smiles froze almost immediately. Amid the chaotic interplay of light, the rainbow barrier suddenly flared brighter than before, its radiance surging outward. It forcibly suppressed the 3 magic treasures for a brief moment before violently repelling them. A clear, ringing sound reverberated through the air as the treasures were struck back. Startled, the 3 hurriedly regained control of their magic treasures and exchanged glances, their faces filled with shock and disbelief. The ferocity of this restriction far exceeded their expectations. The burly man snorted, about to speak again, when the rainbow light surrounding them abruptly flickered and turned crimson. Before any of them could react, the restriction transformed. Clouds of blazing flame rapidly condensed overhead, and the temperature within the area skyrocketed in an instant. What's going on? Wasn't this restriction supposed to be non-offensive? The scarred man shouted in alarm. The other 2 had no chance to answer. The fiery clouds above had already begun to press down upon them with overwhelming heat. At that critical moment, the hooded cultivator among the 3 hastily summoned multiple magic treasures, forming layers of protection around his body. At the same time, he slapped several talismans onto himself, causing barriers of various colors to flicker into existence around him. Moments later, the sea of flames engulfed all 3. Miserable screams rang out only to be abruptly cut short. Silence soon followed. A moment later, the fire clouds dissipated and the rainbow barrier returned to its original state, calm and radiant. Amid the rubble below, there was no sign of life, only 3 magic treasures lay scattered, their glow greatly dimmed. Although not many cultivators encountered such calamities immediately after entering Devil Fall Valley, more than half of those who did met their deaths. In this place, a single stroke of bad luck was enough to cost one their life. There was even a nascent soul elder from a mid-grade sect who perished due to a moment of carelessness upon encountering a spatial tear. Unaware of the fates that had befallen others, Han Li continued onward with unwavering caution. Yet at this moment he encountered a most pleasant surprise. Hovering above a barren wasteland with his hands clasped behind his back, Han Li gazed downward. His eyes shimmered with brilliant blue light, sharp and penetrating. Anyone who witnessed that eerie glow might mistake him for a demonic cultivator, but Han Li cared little for such perceptions. At first glance, there appeared to be nothing ahead. His spiritual sense detected nothing amiss. Yet through the bright sight spirit eyes, Han Li clearly saw a faint arc of light roughly a meter long, hovering some 40 meters ahead. He took a deep breath. The blue light in his eyes dimmed slightly as his expression subtly shifted. He was now completely certain the bright sight spirit eyes were capable of perceiving spatial tiers that even his spiritual sense could not detect. This discovery alone justified the vast quantity of green liquid he had expended over the years to refine the bright sight spirit water. Thanks to this ability, he could now avoid the most common and deadly threat within Devilfall Valley. The only drawback was that he needed to fully activate the bright sight spirit eyes to detect these tiers. Even the slightest lapse in concentration could cause him to overlook one. As for the magic power consumption, it was negligible. However, Han Li frowned slightly. If Marquis Nanlong noticed the strange changes in his eyes later on, it could invite unnecessary trouble. He had no desire to expose this ability to others. Lowering his head in thought, an idea soon occurred to him. He slapped his storage pouch and withdrew a cloak that shimmered with azure light. This was no ordinary garment, but a top-grade magic tool he had obtained during the war. The cloak possessed only a single function to obscure the wearer's face, preventing others from discerning their true appearance. It required no continuous supply of magic power, though it would be ineffective against cultivators of vastly higher realms. Aside from the Mulan Divine Sage and Wei Wuya, there should be no one capable of seeing through it. After donning the cloak, Han Li gave the indistinct spatial tear one last glance, then streaked past it in a flash of azure light. Within a dense forest, where towering trees pierced the sky, a tall woman with an ordinary appearance flew low among the branches. Though her features were unremarkable, her eyes were exceptionally bright and clear. From time to time she glanced about, as if searching for something. After a while she emerged from the forest and came to an abrupt halt, surprise flickering across her face. "It seems this isn't the place. The marks left behind by the ghost spirit sect elder aren't here," she murmured. "It must be elsewhere. But if he wants me to find the spirit kindle fruit and wait for him, does he have other objectives within Devilfall Valley?" She lifted her head and gazed at the yellow, hazy sky, her eyes growing distant as her thoughts drifted. Suddenly her expression changed. In a blur she darted back into the forest, swiftly concealing her aura with several techniques. She hid beneath a massive tree and remained perfectly still. 3 streaks of light of different colors soon appeared in the distance, flying steadily toward her position. Their speed was not particularly fast, but it was clear that 3 elderly cultivators were traveling together. In the blink of an eye, the streaks arrived above the forest. One of them, a silver-haired old man, seemed to sense something and glanced down toward the woman's hiding place. "What is it? Did Brother Cheng discover something?" asked a wrinkled old man dressed in purple robes. The silver-haired old man shook his head. "It's nothing. There's merely a core formation woman hiding below. It seems she doesn't wish to encounter anyone." The purple-robed old man's eyes lit up with excitement. "If she's being this cautious, could there be hidden treasures nearby?" The third old man, his face obscured by swirling azure chi, replied calmly, "Brother Lin is overthinking things. There are no signs of a restriction here, and it's only a lone core formation cultivator, at that a woman. Given how dangerous Devilfall Valley is, avoiding others is only natural. Let's not waste time. We should continue searching for treasures. If we delay too long, we'll have no choice but to head deeper into the valley." Rather than taking offense, the purple-robed old man smiled. "Brother U speaks wisely. There's no need to concern ourselves with her. Although we can move faster, we still can't use our full speed. Searching such a vast area will take time. We can't afford to waste it." The silver-haired old man nodded in agreement, and the three soon flew past the forest. Only after they had left did the woman carefully emerge from her hiding place. She gazed in the direction they had departed and softly muttered, "That silver-haired old man should be Senior Marshal Brother Han's fellow disciple. I didn't expect to encounter him here." Fortunately, it was just a false alarm. She and Han Li had agreed that she would search the outer valley first for traces of the spirit kindle fruit. Afterward, they would meet and search together. Violet Spirit had accepted this arrangement happily, though she had felt slightly puzzled by Han Li's other conditions. Still, she knew his affairs were none of her concern and refrained from asking further. At present, she had found nothing in the forest. After a brief hesitation, she rushed off in the direction the three old men had taken. Elsewhere in Devilfall Valley, within another forest, 6 ghost spirit sect disciples dressed in black robes were conducting a search. Among them were Wang Chan and Yan Ruyan. Floating motionlessly above the forest canopy was a pale old man. As for sect master Wang Tiangu and the other elders, they were nowhere to be seen. Suddenly a cry of alarm echoed from a section of the forest. Moments later, an excited voice reached the old man's ears. "I've found it. It's here." The old man's expression stirred, and he shot over in a streak of black light. Hearing this, the other disciples immediately rushed toward him as well. "Where?" the old man asked coldly, hovering above the disciple while scanning the surroundings. The disciple pointed toward a nearby tree and said respectfully, "Elder Zhong, it's here." Following the direction indicated, Elder Zhong raised an eyebrow. The large tree before him was indeed peculiar. Its roots split into 2 like legs, while 2 thick branches extended outward like arms, making it resemble a gigantic humanoid figure. Elder Zhong nodded slightly, his expression stiff. "Not bad. This tree may indeed be the one. If it truly is, you will be heavily rewarded once we leave the valley." The disciple's face lit up, and he hurriedly expressed his thanks. Elder Zhong descended and circled the massive tree twice before stopping beside it. He stared for a moment, then reached out with his fingers. A trace of black yin qi slowly seeped out from the tree and flowed into his palm. A smile crept onto Elder Zhong's face. "It's truly here. Call the others." As time passed, the cultivators scattered further throughout Devilfall Valley. Apart from those with clear objectives, most began to search aimlessly, hoping to stumble upon hidden treasures. To the disappointment of the majority, however, only a few found anything of value in the outer valley. Most gained nothing at all. Gradually, many came to believe that the rumors were exaggerated and that the true treasures lay deep within the valley. The more impatient and confident cultivators began making their way toward the valley's depths. As for Han Li, his first day in Devilfall Valley passed uneventfully. He did not waste time searching for treasures as he traveled. There was no place that could be considered truly safe. Restrictions could be hidden anywhere. In such an environment, caution was the wisest choice. Though he flew at a steady, unhurried pace, he gradually drew closer to the meeting point he had agreed upon with Marquis Nanlong, becoming increasingly aware of his position within the valley. On the western side of Devilfall Valley stood a small brown mountain. 2 men were present atop it. One was an old man in white robes with a gentle, benevolent appearance, seated cross-legged in meditation. The other stood upright nearby, clad in embroidered robes and wearing a tall ceremonial crown, his long beard cascading down to his chest. They were none other than Marquis Nanlong and Heaven Peak sect Elder Lu Weiying. Marquis Nanlong stood 20 meters ahead of Lu Weiying, his hands clasped behind his back. Though his gaze seemed fixed aloofly on the distant horizon, a faint trace of worry flickered deep within his eyes. Sensing this, Lu Weiying spoke calmly, "Brother Nanlong, there is no need to be so concerned. He may simply have been teleported farther away and requires more time to arrive." Did we not personally witness him pass through the spell formation? Marquis Nanlong let out a soft sigh and turned toward the old man. With a hint of helplessness in his voice, he replied, "Your words are true. However, you also know that the dangers of Devilfall Valley are not easily dealt with. No matter how great one's cultivation may be, we need this person. Otherwise, our journey here will have been in vain." Lu Weiying opened his eyes and muttered, "We do indeed require the yin-yang ring to pass through the great North Essence lights. But is the ancient flame toad truly so powerful? If not, we should have simply taken the ring and left him out of this." Marquis Nanlong frowned slightly. "I have not personally witnessed its strength, but according to Master Kangkun's records, the beast is said to be exceptionally fearsome. It is best to have a cultivator capable of restraining it. Otherwise, subduing it would consume far too much effort and strength. I do not wish to expose myself unnecessarily in a place as dangerous as this." After a moment's contemplation, Lu Weiying nodded slowly. "Your reasoning is sound. It seems you've grown more cautious since the events on the Mulan Plains. That said, the ancient flame toad was not especially renowned in antiquity. Some records even claim it was not difficult to deal with. However, since Master Kangkun personally attested to its strength, it is likely a mutant variant." Marquis Nanlong shook his head, slightly unconvinced. "That is possible. Still, I believe it more likely that the beast had no natural predators within the valley and cultivated for countless years, resulting in its overwhelming power." Lu Weiying closed his eyes once more and said slowly, "Since matters have reached this point, further discussion is pointless. The flame toad must be eliminated regardless. As for the passage leading to its lair, it is shrouded in Great North Essence lights. Without proper preparations, it is impossible to pass through. At least we need not worry about others discovering the ancient cultivator remains before us." Hearing Lu Weiying speak so calmly, Marquis Nanlong finally smiled. Just as he was about to respond, his expression suddenly changed. He quickly turned his head and looked toward the sky. An azure streak of light was slowly approaching. "He's finally arrived." Recognizing Han Li's flying light at a glance, Marquis Nanlong's face lit up with relief. When Lu Weiying heard this, he immediately opened his eyes and rose to his feet. It seemed that despite his calm demeanor, he too had been harboring some concern. The azure light moved with notable caution. After some time, it finally arrived before them. The radiance faded, revealing a cloaked figure hovering in mid-air. Surprised that his spiritual sense could not penetrate the cloak, Marquis Nanlong hesitated briefly before asking, "Is that you, fellow Taoist Han?" "What? Is there someone else who agreed to meet you here?" Han Li smiled faintly as he adjusted the hood of his cloak, his gaze briefly shifting toward Lu Weiying. Lu Weiying also noticed the unusual nature of Han Li's cloak, but his expression remained indifferent. "Fellow Taoist must be joking," Marquis Nanlong replied with a chuckle, clearly relieved upon recognizing Han Li's voice. "Brother Lu and I have been waiting here for quite some time." Though puzzled by the cloak, Marquis Nanlong refrained from asking. It was after all a minor matter. The three soon began discussing their plan to eliminate the ancient flame toad. Before reaching the toad's lair, they would first have to enter the valley depths. The so-called valley depths was a vast region at the heart of Devilfall Valley, sealed within an extraordinarily powerful ancient restriction. There was no fixed path leading inside. Along the border of the valley depths, streams of light constantly revolved, revealing more than a dozen entrances of varying sizes. However, each of these passages was layered with multiple restrictions. To pass through them, one would need to dissolve the restrictions one by one or suffer the consequences of brute force. The might of these ancient restrictions was unfathomable and utterly merciless. It was best not to provoke them at all. Once attacked, a restriction would retaliate without restraint. In the past, Master Kang Kun had spent several days studying these formations with his profound knowledge of spell arrays, only to ultimately abandon the effort. Though dissolving them was technically possible, it would take far too long for a single person. Later, Master Kang Kun devised another solution. By chance, he discovered a hidden passage concealed within the Great North Essence Lights. The passage was extremely well hidden, and the Essence Lights would annihilate any cultivator who wandered in unknowingly. However, with the yin-yang ring entering the valley, depths would be relatively effortless. After agreeing on this plan, Hanli and the other two immediately rose into the sky and headed straight toward the valley depths. Just as they took flight, Marquis Nanlong slapped his storage pouch and produced several bells, each a few inches in size and of different colors. He hung them at his waist, causing Han Li to raise an eyebrow in surprise. Noticing his curiosity, Marquis Nanlong explained, "These are response bells. Whenever the space around a spatial tear fluctuates, they will ring. While they cannot detect every tear, they can warn us of most." Han Li nodded and the three streaked across the sky. As they traveled toward the valley depths, the bells proved extremely useful. Whenever a spatial tear appeared, the bells would ring immediately, alerting them and preventing disaster. However, these bells could only respond to spatial tears that possessed some form of detectable fluctuation. If a tear was truly incorporeal, they would offer no warning. Aware of this limitation, Han Li quietly activated his bright sight spirit eyes, scanning for invisible tears. Sure enough, he soon discovered one to their side completely undetected by the bells. As they passed by it without incident, Han Li's vigilance deepened. Meanwhile, Marquis Nanlong and Lu Weiying were able to fly with greater speed and ease thanks to the bell's assistance. Since no further invisible spatial tears appeared along their route, Han Li chose not to speak and remained silent. Nearly a day later, they arrived before an unfamiliar mountain ridge at the edge of the valley depths. The ridge consisted of more than 10 small mountains linked together, forming a miniature mountain range that stretched for dozens of kilometers. Beyond it, crimson light rose into the sky, blocking out the yellow haze entirely. The sight was deeply unsettling. "That should be the valley depths," Marquis Nanlong said solemnly. "That crimson light is an extremely formidable restriction. We must not provoke it, or we will surely suffer." Though this was his first time seeing it, he instinctively sensed its danger. Han Li narrowed his eyes and stared at the crimson glow without emotion. Given its strangeness, he would not have rushed forward, even without Marquis Nanlong's warning. Why did the ancient devil cultivators arrange so many terrifying restrictions around Devilfall Valley? What was this place's true purpose, and what secrets were they guarding? This valley almost feels like a prison. The thought surfaced briefly in Han Li's mind, but he soon laughed inwardly at himself. What kind of creature would require an entire valley as its prison? That was impossible. It was far more likely that this had once been a stronghold of devil cultivators. At that moment, Marquis Nanlong led the way, flying toward two of the mountains along the ridge. After a short while, he raised his hand, and the three came to a halt, slowly descending to the ground. Before them were green grass, rugged stone, towering trees, and tangled vines. Everything appeared entirely ordinary. Suppressing the excitement in his eyes, Marquis Nanlong said calmly, "We're here." It didn't originally look like this. When Master Kang Kun arrived, he deployed an illusion technique to conceal the entrance. "I will dissolve it now." With a wave of his sleeve, he released a white jade pendant. It circled once above his head before stopping. Muttering an incantation, he formed hand seals and struck the pendant with several spell seals of different colors. Each seal was absorbed seamlessly. Soon the jade pendant began to tremble, emitting a clear, ringing sound as brilliant white light erupted from it. With a sharp shout, dense white mist burst forth from the pendant and swept forward. An astonishing transformation followed. The mountain rocks and surrounding scenery twisted violently, as though a painted landscape were being torn apart. With a resonant chime, the white light swept everything away, before retreating back into the jade pendant, which then vanished. When the light faded, Han Li and the other two found themselves standing before a completely unfamiliar scene. That's all for today's content. See you in the next part. Support me by becoming a member. It will give me more motivation. Thank you so much.